Dr. Bob Sears,
Aaron Siri.
thank you for joining.
I'm super happy to be here.
I appreciate it. So, I think most people who are watching this know who you are, but for anybody who doesn't, 30 years practicing as a pediatrician, went to Georgetown Medical School, did your residency at Children's Hospital in LA, right?
Yeah.
And the vaccine book. It's 500,000 copies in circulation, part of the Sears Parenting Library, which has about 15 books, including the baby book. So kind of part of a storied legacy. And couldn't be happier that you wrote the vaccine book as part of that series and has made into the hands of families across the country. So, there's so many places we could start, but here's where I'd like to start, which is that you've been a pediatrician for 30 years. During that period, you've seen how many families have come through your office, would you say?
Oh, could be 30,000.
Okay.
40,000.
30, 40,000. In terms of how many of them have kids with no vaccines versus those that have gotten vaccines, what's the split? Would you just guesstimate?
I would say now it's probably 99.99% don't do any vaccines in the first few years of their baby's life.
Okay.
And then I would say maybe 5% will then vaccinate to go to school because they're in California. I would say the other 95% probably remain unvaccinated the rest of their childhood. That's now.
That's now.
Right.
And then historically.
Historically, when I started in 97, 98, I would say probably 95% did vaccinate. We always did partial vaccination. It was like my slow, partial alternative approach to vaccinating. Probably almost everyone did that. And then I think the ones that didn't do any vaccines were a minority. And that's basically just been a steady curve shift, for both sides from one side to the other, slowly over the years.
So 30 to 40,000 families over 30 years, starting out with 95% getting vaccinations. And you'd say it's kind of linear in terms of the drop-off to now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've had a good opportunity to observe children directly in your pediatric practice in terms of their health, right? Over a course of many years across a lot of families. And for all the epis and statisticians out there who are going to go bananas right now. Go ahead, you can go bananas, but this is still your lived experience, and that has the value. That is valuable. In fact, it's probably, and for many people, a lot more valuable than somebody trying to do a cold, dry, retrospective epi study using data where they're, confounding it. This is in many ways a prospective observation that you have had in an environment where you didn't control who showed up at your practice, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So with that, on that lead up, what has been your observation of the health outcomes between the children that have received vaccines versus those that haven't?
Yeah, I think it's very obvious to me, very, very clear that kids who grow up without any vaccines seem way healthier. When they get sick, the illnesses seem very minor. They almost never fall into a complication like an ear infection, sinus infection, tonsillitis. I see so little of that. They handle illness just so much better. And it's really opened my eyes because honestly, I didn't used to think that. When I started, I thought it would be perfectly fine to partially vaccinate patients and that their immune systems would handle it. And turns out I was wrong.
And in terms of serious health conditions, are you more likely to see those in the vaccinated versus unvaccinated?
Oh, yeah. What I just said, I was, just the tip of the iceberg. Not only do they seem to get sick way less often or need my help with their illness, but I'm seeing way less chronic illnesses. I feel like I used to deal with so many kids with really swollen tonsils, sleep apnea, just from getting sick all the time. And I used to always write down everyone's tonsil sizes of their checkups and all kinds of discussions about that. Tons of sinus infection, chronic. Sinus infection used to be a really big part of my pediatric practice. Allergies, eczema, asthma was huge.
This is, you mean when you had more vaccinated kids?
Yes, way back at the beginning. Yeah.
And now you're saying you don't have many kids with that.
Asthma is I would say almost disappeared, not completely,
in
but
your pediatric
in my
practice.
pediatric practice, yeah.
And how many families would you say are in your practice right now?
Now we have about 15,000 registered in our electronic medical record. It could be maybe 5,000 of those are active, maybe I see them every so often.
And the rate of asthma right now is what, like 1 in 11 kids, 1 in 9, 10, 11, 12?
Yeah.
And out of 5,000 presumably active families, you're saying you see almost none.
Yeah, I see a little bit, but not like it used to be. I just remember my days were filled with prescribing inhalers and talking about how to treat your asthma and how to reduce your allergies and how to treat your eczema. And then after a day of seeing all those kids in my office with chronic medical problems, then I'd have 10 sick kids come into the office at the end of the day with ear infections and sinuses and, prescribing antibiotics only when needed. I was pretty careful with the antibiotics, but I feel like I was a super busy pediatrician and I so rarely saw someone and I could just say, oh, you're totally healthy. I didn't find anything wrong, and I was getting worn out, I would say. I mean, just the days were busy and I felt like, gosh, is this really what pediatrics is supposed to be like?
And these were families who were the ones that were vaccinating back at the start of your practice. They were still getting less vaccines than the typical family, right? Because they were following what used to be, I recall, you used to have an alternative schedule in your vaccine handbook that slowed things down, gave less vaccines, and they were still seeing more health issues amongst those vaccinated versus the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So for any of the epis or statisticians whose heads are exploding right now, maybe this could be an interesting point. And I don't know until I ask you. How many families does a typical pediatrician that follows the CDC schedule typically handle?
Yeah, you could see maybe 30, 40 in a day. In a busy office.
So for one pediatrician, now how many pediatricians are in your office?
It's just me.
It's just you. And you've got 5,000 families, you think, approximately, that are active in your right now. A pediatrician that is just following the CDC schedule, vaccinating, could they handle 5,000 families?
I would say maybe with a couple of nurse practitioners.
Just like you. You have any nurse practitioners?
No, I don't.
Okay, just you.
Okay,
so just you.
I would say no way. I feel like the reason I can have so many well children in my office, I think, is just because they never need me. They come in 2 or 3 times as a baby for checkups, and then I'll see them every year or 2 after that. I might see a small fraction of them 1 time a year being sick. There's so many kids I never see sick. And that's why I can handle so many. Whereas back when I first started, I would say my active patients were probably, I don't know, I would guess maybe 1,000 or something like that, because 20, 30, 40% of those are always coming in sick repeatedly.
Well, there's a deep irony to that, right? Because the whole point of vaccination is to prevent you from getting infectious diseases. Because what you're describing to me, a lot of them sound like one or other type of infection. But it sounds like the vaccinated kids, this one's going to be harder for the epis and stats to go nuts on.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is the kids who are vaccinated actually are presenting with more infections than the kids who have no vaccines, which is ironic given the whole point of vaccination is to prevent infections.
Exactly. I mean, the irony is quite horrific, I would say. I mean, it's fun to kind of smile about it, but if I'm right, then what we're doing in the whole field of pediatrics is like dead wrong. And it just blows my mind.
It's dead wrong in terms
irony
of patient care. It's dead wrong in terms of childhood health, but it definitely feeds into billing codes and more billing, and which, I'm not as a just, I often have found that the AAP, right, the trade group that guides pediatricians in many ways and what a lot of pediatricians look to, often tends to make decisions. They overlook things that cause more billing. They get upset about things that cause less billing. Vaccination rates go down. That's less billing. They go crazy. Chronic disease in children go up. Crickets, more billing. Not fair, just because that's their focus. They're a trade organization. All right, but putting my segue on the AAP aside, wow. But it does comport with the numerous studies that show that those who've got influenza vaccinations, for example, versus those that don't, might have sometimes still the same amount of influenza infections between the vaccinated and unvaccinated, or even maybe a little less influenza infections in the vaccinated group. But overall, the total number of respiratory infections are far more in the vaccinated group. Right? There's a whole series of studies like that. I tweeted those out. It was a lot of fun to see the reaction. Or the studies of non-live vaccines that have occurred in African countries like in Guinea-Bissau, the Abe studies, who show that vaccinated kids are more susceptible to various infections they never would have thought of, like malaria and so forth. So your experience would reflect that. So would, as well as the various vaxxed, unvaxxed studies.
I know.
They all reflect the same thing that you just said.
Yeah, there's a study, I think, in Canada showing higher asthma rates in people that get DTaP vaccines, like at a certain, like starting at a younger age versus an older age or something like that. I don't know. People say there's not a lot of science comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated, but I feel like there is. There might not be the great, big, ultimate, huge study, that we want, but there is a lot of research out there.
Well, there's you want to hear something funny? There's about a dozen or so such studies that I cited in my book, as well as I put it on a slide when I presented before ACIP, the vaccine committee at CDC. I just got contact by a Guardian reporter yesterday who's told me, Mr. Siri, so 3 of those have now been retracted, withdrawn, or have had questions put on them. Do you plan to, address that, make a note about it? And I wrote back something like, I'm very happy to respond that they, something about going after those who dare publish in this realm. But my point back to the reporter, my bigger point was, you want to focus on these 3 studies. Why don't you focus on the hundreds of others that show problems? You studiously ignored those from my book. You studiously ignored those from my AC presentation. They're probably going to ignore this thing, right? And they're just trying to find those little points. But, to your point, there are a number of vaxxed, unvaxxed studies. They're just ignored, but they're consistent. The vaccinated kids, multiple times the rate of chronic health issues, as I also saw in the Amish community that I represent in New York.
Yeah, I love doing a checkup on a patient. I like telling parents, your kid's pretty uneventful. I don't say anything wrong. They're developing great. They're growing fine. They physically look very healthy. And I think parents love hearing that. And I tell you, the number, I allot 15, 20 minutes for a checkup, right? And I do like 5 checkups every 2 hours, I think, or something like that. So there's always like a little catch-up time where I can go over time if I need to. I kind of spaced out because I don't want to be a rushed pediatrician. But I remember the old days when people were vaccinating, every single checkup would turn into, I'm here for a checkup, but my kid has these 3 problems. My kid has these, allergies. My kid has asthma. My kid has all these other, so many things turned into like chronic health problem checkups. And the number of checkups I see today, I'd say probably 90% of the kids, everything's fine. There's nothing to fix. Nothing's really wrong with them. We'll talk about parenting problems. We'll talk about, other stuff, but And I love it. And that's how raising a kid should be. parents should be able to have healthy kids where you don't even need a doctor all the time to help solve all these things. It should be the minority instead of the majority. And so I love how my practice has morphed into that. I think it just makes me a lot, I enjoy my job a lot more. But I feel like that's how it should be. I feel like that's probably how it was in the old days too.
Well, in the old days, and I throw this statistic out a lot, and I've really not heard a lot of pushback on it. It's kind of ignored. But child following the CDC schedule in 1986 got 3 injections on or before their first birthday. 3 injections and 2 oral drops. That's it. A child following the CDC schedule today gets 29 injections on or before their first birthday. I'm counting the 3 in utero that the mother gets, the baby's in the womb, and 2 oral drops, or 3 depending on which rotavirus they get, okay? Chronic health, according to the data, under 10% of kids had a chronic health conditions in the early 80s. Over 40% of kids have a chronic health condition today. That would be reflective of what you just described. And what are those chronic health conditions that exploded? They're mostly conditions that are related to some form of immune system dysregulation or dysfunction. What's causing the immune systems of kids to dysregulate en masse? It must be Fox News, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, that's what's affecting their immune systems. Or I know it's people spreading information that's not true. They're causing immune system dysregulation. You have to understand how this works. You say something wrong and then the immune system goes awry. It's nothing to do with all those injections you're specifically giving to babies to modify their immune system.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting to talk about why I think that's true, or how can vaccines actually do that? Is there a biological mechanism by which vaccines could actually make your immune system less healthy? And I think I know what the reason is. My theory, and this has actually been played out in a lot of animal research and some kids' research as well, but I feel like vaccines are so artificial. There's nothing natural about it. It's not germs and water, as Dr. Hotez would have you believe on the podcast he's been on. It's genetically engineered germ components or genetically modified germ components or hybridized crossbred germ components that there's nothing natural about that. And they are combined with all kinds of chemicals. And so when these artificial components are injected into us and our immune system sees that, it's the reaction they have is not natural. Plus, they're not being given to our immune system the way natural germs are. Vaccines are injected, so you know this, but they bypass the natural layers of our immune system. And so what our immune system is supposed to do is things come in through our lungs, our nose, our eyes, maybe through a cut in our skin, and the superficial layers of our skin is all presented to what's called I guess it's the first layer of the immune system, the layer that accepts the germ, processes it, and then presents it to the internal part of our immune system. It's a very simplified explanation, and then our immune system creates a natural response and protects us from illness, or we go through an illness, we get sick and symptoms, and then we get better, or we don't. Vaccines bypass all those first layers, and the germs are all presented to the internal part of our immune system, so the immune system overreacts. The allergic part of the immune system attacks the vaccines, the inflammation part, and the germ-fighting part, instead of only the germ-fighting part seeing the germs and reacting, the entire immune system reacts. You do that over and over again with a new baby, and a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old, you repeatedly hit the immune system with these artificial ingredients, you're going to get an artificial response that basically turns your immune system dysfunctional. And so if, people listening to this starting, a few minutes ago saying, there's no way that could be true. There's no way vaccines could make your immune system less healthy. I think that's how it does it. I think that's why. And I think that's why I see what I see in my office.
Yeah, that's actually the best simplified explanation I think I've heard.
Thank you.
In many ways, right? I mean, you did it without using the word adaptive immunity, innate immunity, or people can't help themselves when they try to explain that. But I think but that I think that makes sense, especially when folks understand how the immune system works. How and my favorite part about it is that they'll tell you, oh, vaccines, like you said, are just water and they're just like some germ, as if they're innocuous. At the same time, they're powerful medicine that are supposed to modify your immune system from head to toe. They really can't have it both ways.
Right. They designed vaccines to make your immune system overreact. They have adjuvants, mainly aluminum, because sometimes the artificial germ components are too weakened and the immune system doesn't react enough. So they have to combine it with aluminum so your immune system hyper-reacts. And they want it that way. That's how they design them, because that's the only way they'll get antibodies generated enough to pass the efficacy studies. Sorry, I used a big word. Efficacy, yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, look, a lot of people like so if you took, a dead piece of a virus or bacteria, right? Just as basically, or maybe just like a protein chain, and you injected it, nothing will happen because not causing cellular death. And to your point, you need to cause cellular death to have that immune system reaction. And so they put in adjuvants. Those adjuvants create a sustained immune reaction that's not natural. It's just not the way it should be. Going back to, so you're in Orange County, California, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just so I'm just thinking of anybody's listening to this and they're like going, about your experience. I'm just going to try to play devil's advocate on this for a moment. All right. So you're in Orange County. You're seeing that the unvaccinated kids are just way healthier, not only on chronic disease, right? Which the studies all reflect, but also on infections, on both scores. It's like, all right, fine. More chronic disease is the trade-off for less infection, but you're seeing both. More infection and more chronic disease. Okay. Are there, could it be that all the unvaccinated kids that are unhealthy are going to some other pediatrician in Orange County? Is there another?
No, actually they're not, because they can't. I'm the only place they can come to because no other doctor will see unvaccinated kids.
There's no other pediatricians that see unvaccinated kids in Orange County except for you.
There might be one or two. There used to be a few more, but they moved out of the state. And no other doctors will see them.
So you've got them.
Yeah, I have all of them. And so the problem is these doctors aren't getting to see how healthy these unvaccinated kids are.
So the other pediatricians aren't going to do it because they're kicking them out of the practice.
They're kicking them out.
I mean, we collabed on this actually on Instagram, which, right?
Yeah.
You brought this to my attention the other day. That something was like $2,500 a pediatrician gets if they get 25 core vaccines into a child by, was it
two and a half years of age? Yeah.
So by 2.5 years of age, if they inject them with 25 core vaccines, they get a $2,500 bonus.
Right.
This is one particular insurance carrier provider with 3 million participants in the plan. That's an incentive.
I know. And
that's an incentive to throw the kids out.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was super excited. I actually filmed a little selfie Instagram video, talking about, can you believe this? Can you believe they would give a $2,500 incentive to pediatricians per patient that they keep up to date on vaccines? And then I'm like, I'm going to post this. It's going to create a big firestorm. And then I chickened out.
Oh, you didn't. You just, look, the medical board has been coming after you for years and years. I know that. And, it's understandable that, you offer a service, as you just said, nobody else does in Orange County. And if they should, where are these families going to go? So that's, you have a duty to those families. And it's understandable. As a lawyer, the medical board can't come after me. It'd be funny if they did. I would love it. There would be the best day ever. And I would relish deposing every one of them. But okay. So that would be, all right. So that avoids selection bias in your experience, which is one could say, okay, but the ones that, so if you are the really only pediatrician in that vicinity, in that area, that is treating, is acting as a pediatrician to unvaccinated kids. You're getting a chance to see them all, and then you've also had the opportunity to see the vaccinated kids, and of course, the background rates in America. This reminds me, by the way, of a group that reached out to us in upstate New York. I think it was Ulster County. After New York repealed the religious exemption, there was an effort undertaken to compare the vaccinated and the unvaccinated kids to see the health outcomes, to try to show New York State, hey guys, we don't need these shots. Our kids are already healthier. Like, why would you want to kick us out of your state for not taking them? And what this group did is they gathered the child health form that the pediatrician that child had to fill out for the kid to go to school every year in New York State. So meaning the mainstream pediatricians in that whole area were filling out this annual form that was very detailed. And it had like asthma, rheumatoid, go through it, like all the different things. It went through like every possible condition a kid could have on it, right? And what they did is for all the unvaccinated kids, they collected that form from 5 school districts, every single one. And that's what they told me. I had no reason to doubt them. I did my normal crawl. I was like, how do you know? What did you do? How did you figure that out? I was comfortable that was true, comfortable enough that I put it on my firm letterhead, and I sent New York State Department of Health a letter. And I said, hey, here is the health outcomes of every single unvaccinated kid in this county. It's on iCanDecide's website, iCanDecide.org's website. It's in my book. It's in, probably too controversial for your book. I don't know. What's the publisher? Little Brown. Yeah. You probably have a lot of fun with them. Anyway, but we wrote that to New York State. And New York State they couldn't even address it. They're like, vaccines are safe and effective. Yeah. And I was like, you're ignoring what I sent you. Show me evidence that these kids are, because like your experience, instead of having 1 in 11 asthma, they had like none. Instead of having, we went through with the background rate, how many of those kids should have had X, Y, and Z condition, and they virtually had none of them. Yeah. And the same is true of the Amish community represents. Same thing, about 80 kids in this that are related to the lawsuit that where they're trying to shut their schools down in Amish community. Those kids should have a whole host of health issues. They have zero. Now, they'll say, well, that's because they drink raw milk. All right, let's drink raw milk. That's because they don't have screens. Okay, let's not have screens. That's because they're not under high power line. Okay. You know what I mean? For the Amish, they want to, but it's the Ulster kids. They're just part of the mainstream community. Anyways, that definitely comports with your direct experience. Okay. Do you tell other pediatricians about this?
I am not nearly as social as I should be in the pediatric community, in the community. I will admit that. And I feel like that's kind of something I think I regret, that I didn't stay in the circle of all my colleagues. That we could have these conversations. I'm kind of an introverted person by nature, and I spend a lot of time with my family and friends. And so I really could have made a bigger effort to go to all the pediatric conferences, the meetings at the hospital, chat with other pediatricians, keep relationships going. Because when I first started, I knew everyone. I saw them at all the hospital meetings. And I don't know, I feel like I was maybe part of the reason, I don't know, maybe I accepted how I was being ostracized by not trying to fight it, I guess. And so no, I don't have a lot of conversations with pediatricians about this. I want to, because I'm totally curious about what they think about this phenomenon, or I'm curious how their practices are, first of all. But I feel like from what I read just in the pediatric research literature, and I get a pediatric newspaper every month, from some, mainstream organization, and they talk about everything pediatricians are dealing with. And I feel like with everything going on, if all the kids in our country were so healthy, if everyone was in great shape, very few chronic diseases, if all the kids were so healthy, then pediatricians could say, hey, we're doing a great job. Look how healthy. American kids are the healthiest kids in the whole world because of our healthcare system. Whether it's because of vaccines or not, our healthcare system is doing an awesome job, yay us. And the opposite is true. We know, and I don't know if your audience knows this, but American kids are ranked among the lowest in health in developed countries all over the world. We have the sickest, least healthy children.
We're ranked dead last, right?
I think we are dead last, or we hover between dead last and almost dead last. But so I don't see how pediatricians can keep claiming, hey, we're doing a great job. We need to keep doing the same thing because our kids are so awesome. Let's not change anything. So when someone comes along and tries to change something, if they had evidence that what they're doing is working, then maybe they'd have a good argument, but they don't. They don't have an argument to support their mainstream pediatric policies because the outcomes are so poor.
Do you think that that's primarily related to vaccination? Or is there something else?
The only thing different in an office like that's a mainstream pediatric office, there's only I'd say one big difference is vaccination. That's probably 90% of the difference. The other difference would be overprescription of antibiotics. The AAP, God bless them, they do their best to try to train us to not overprescribe for sinus infections, not overprescribe for ear infections. But I think pediatricians tend to do that a lot in years past. They might be getting better at it, but I don't think overprescription of antibiotics could explain such a huge difference.
So the only big difference between your office and the other pediatric offices surrounding you in Orange County is vaccination and potentially you prescribe less antibiotics. Yeah. But I presume that might be correlated with kids needing antibiotics.
Yes, right. No,
so
right.
if you don't have kids coming in who need them, they don't need them, right?
Yeah, I can't think of any other difference between my regular office and the kids they're seeing. I mean, there's really...
Okay, all right. Going down the arguments against this, okay? Here's the next one I imagine somebody's going to say to you. They're going to say, all right, Dr. Sears, fine. You got all the kids in Orange County, so you don't have selection bias. And the only differential appears to be vaccination. But what about freeloading? They're going to say, well, the kids who are unvaccinated, they're benefiting and not getting sick because they are in a community that's got quote unquote herd immunity. What about that claim? You're going to get that.
Oh yeah.
So what do you say to that?
Yeah, because doctor would say, even if it is true that vaccination makes you less healthy, makes your immune system less healthy, gives you more chronic disease, they'll say it's worth it for our society. They'll say, even if that is true, who cares? I've got to keep doing it. Otherwise, we're all going to die, right? And
we're all going to die.
I know. And I've had patients tell me, they've come in and say, yeah, my doctor just was yelling at us that you're killing your child. Your child is literally going to die. I'm not going to see you anymore as a doctor, but I'm just assuming your kid's going to go off and die. So, well, what you asked me before my little tangent, the reason that's not true is because most vaccines don't prevent infection and transmission of the diseases they're targeting. Most vaccines, I'm not saying some vaccines, I'm saying most vaccines don't work by adding any sort of herd immunity or stopping infection and contagious transmission to people around you. So people who don't vaccinate, people who vaccinate, they're all in just about the same boat when it comes to most of these things that we vaccinate for.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. And so, all right.
You probably would have used adaptive immunity and innate immunity.
No, I'm just a lawyer. What do I know? I leave that to the folks who...
I don't like using big words to explain, especially to a lawyer. You need to...
So right, that's true. Okay, so fine, but let's not stop there. So all right, so that knocks out, DTaP, Tdap, IPV, meningococcal vaccine,
flu, COVID,
and then for Hep B, it's not transmitted in school settings. So then, what we're really down to is MMR and chickenpox vaccine, right? I mean, that's pretty much the only ones that can prevent transmission to any real degree. By the way, do you know about the lawsuit we brought with regards to the pertussis vaccine? My firm did.
I don't know if I do.
Do you want to hear this one? It's kind of fun. Super short because it's actually going through preliminary approval now. But the short of it is this: there was an ad on TV where a grandma.
Oh, the wolf,
the big
bad wolf.
Right? Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it? Tell me what. Tell me what you remember.
I wrote that story in my other vaccine book I didn't bring today. My fictional novel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
Oh yeah. Tell me what you remember about it. Go ahead.
Well, I'll set the scene in my book. I wrote a chapter is basically this young family.
This book?
No, not that book. This is my other fictional one that I didn't even bring. Yeah,
Real prolific.
It's a tale of two sides.
Okay.
So this mom or kid catches whooping cough, all right? And, she gets treated. The kid does fine, right? There's no complications or anything. But the doctors were berating her for not vaccinating her child and not vaccinating grandma and everything. But then she did all this research and she talked to a doctor, I guess. It's kind of me, the local doctor. And I explained to her, well, it wouldn't have mattered if you vaccinated yourself or your husband or anybody, your baby could have still gotten whooping cough because it doesn't stop transmission. And I don't know, it was a whole explanation. Basically, the purpose of that was why and how we know whooping cough vaccine doesn't prevent transmission. So there's no reason to vaccinate grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brothers and sisters in order to try to protect the baby. So then at the end of that chapter, that commercial comes on TV. Mom's watching TV, the commercial of this grandmother, basically, she's holding a little baby, everything's all cute, pretty music playing in the background, a soft focus, soft coloring, beautiful scene that every grandma's dream, holding their grandchild. And then the grandma like turns her head and coughs and comes back and she's a wolf. She's like turned into like the big bad wolf and she's like coughing, and then the baby's crying. So I don't remember every aspect of it. And then everyone's freaking out because all of a sudden the mom or the grandma who has whooping cough is now infecting her granddaughter. And she's horrified, because she's turned into a big bad wolf, all because she didn't get the Tdap vaccine to protect her baby. Something like that, right? And so
that's right.
So the character in my book basically picks up the remote and just chucks it at the TV and smashes the TV in anger. And just how ridiculous it was. But anyway, did I get it? Was I close?
Yep. I mean, the commercial is similar to what you said, which is the parents are coming over to visit grandma. They bring the baby. Grandma grabs the baby. She's like, oh, baby. And then, like you said, I believe the grandma coughs. And then, like you said, sure, she turns into a wolf with sharp teeth. Yeah. And you look, and it shows into the baby's eye. In the baby's eye is the reflection of this wolf.
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
remember
right.
that?
Yeah.
Right? Because the implication is that the grandma is going to, like you said, the implication is that she's going to presumably eat the baby, kill the baby, cook the baby. But it's not good for the baby is the idea. It's bad for the baby. Baby being held by wolf grandma, no good. Okay. And so the problem, of course, is that since the pertussis vaccine can reduce symptoms for a short duration of time, but it does not stop transmission, as reflected by the studies and data, the grandma that gets the vaccine is more likely to give the baby pertussis. The grandma's not. So we brought a lawsuit for that commercial,
awesome.
A class action lawsuit saying, hey, that's false advertising. Because the grandma, or what we alleged in the complaint, is we said, that grandma that you're depicting as the wolf who's unvaccinated is actually less likely to transmit. The one who got it is more likely to transmit. Anyways, we've resolved that lawsuit, and it's going through preliminary and final approval right now. And actually, I tweeted out for people to sign up for the settlement. And if you had gotten into, I don't know, I'll leave it at that. And then the important point is that, to your point, which is, and people don't think about it that way, which is, right, the freeloading in that example. Who's freeloading in that? Who's freeloading in that scenario? The unvaccinated or the vaccinated kids? It's the vaccinated kids actually freeloaders because they're more likely to spread it.
Yeah, and I just
freeloaders. Nobody's a freeloader.
Yeah, but I think an explanation of why that is possible. I think you kind of skipped over this in your narrative is, or I just want the audience to be clear about this and why this is true is if you are not vaccinated and you catch pertussis, you're going to have a little cold and cough for a few days, and then you're going to get hit with this horrendous cough, really horrible cough. And you know you have whooping cough. You're going to stay home. You're not going to go over to hold the baby because you know you're sick. You're going to maybe call your doctor, get some antibiotics, and you get better. And people who are not vaccinated, when they catch whooping cough, they get sick. And so they're not going to spread it to everybody because they're staying home, if they're smart. If you're vaccinated, you won't know you have whooping cough.
You're less likely to.
You're less likely because you're less likely to develop that severe phase of the cough. So you walk around holding all your grandchildren for 3 weeks and you're contagious and you're infecting all of them.
Well, I just turned into a wolf. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're infecting all of them because you don't know you have whooping cough because your vaccine masked the symptoms and did nothing to prevent transmission to everyone around you. So you're right. I just wanted to make that clear because I feel like
I appreciate that. You should have written our complaint. That is what we actually. So that was the crux of our entire legal argument. What you just said, our argument in our complaint, but plus an additional thing. Are you familiar with linked epitope suppression?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So not only to add to your point, that's exactly right.
You're more likely to catch whooping cough in general, I think.
Over and over and over again, because the person that gets pertussis, gets sick once, knows to stay in bed, and then develops sterilizing immunity, for lack of a better term, okay, for at least a good few years, where if they then encounter pertussis bacterium, Bordetella pertussis, they're not going to get infected. Not going to carry it. Done. The person that got vaccinated, the first time they get infected, they're going to have less symptoms. They're not going to know, less likely to know to stay in bed, more likely to keep circulating in the community, more likely to go to school, more likely to hold the baby. But it gets worse because that initial imprinting of immunity that vaccine created, which is only 5 of the 3,000 or so antigens on the surface of the pertussis bacterium, they're going to keep having that same defective immune response every single time they encounter the Bordetella pertussis bacterium. So they not only can get infected that one time and not know it, 2 months later, infected again, and again. And that's why, as you know, as we in our papers, the intra-epidemic intervals of pertussis in America, according to the data, have not gotten wider. In fact, some studies show they've gotten shorter, meaning there might even be more circulating pertussis bacterium because of the unvaccinated? No. Because of the vaccinated, ironically.
Yeah, and the doctor who wrote about linked epitope suppression, Dr. Cherry.
Dr. Cherry at UCLA. Yeah, your alma mater.
Yeah. He is as mainstream as they come after Stanley Plotkin.
Oh.
You know? He is like, if Stanley's the grandfather of vaccinology, Cherry is the great uncle of vaccinology. I mean, he's a mainstream doctor who helped develop, our mainstream vaccines and policy and research. He's as mainstream as they come. And he published that study that talked about that phenomenon as he's like, hey, heads up, guys. We created this phenomenon, oops.
He's cringing at the fact that the truth is being used. His truth. He's cringing. I'm no doubt. I know he's probably cringing. So the seminal study that reviewed all of the pertussis literature that was published in 2018, I believe it was, that included like who were considered the world leading pertussis vaccine experts, okay, and two of the world's infectious disease organizations and so forth. They published that pertussis vaccine does not in any way stop infectious transmission, in any way.
Yeah.
Because it creates no mucosal immunity. It creates immunity in your bloodstream, like IgG antibodies, but it doesn't create mucosal immunity. And that mucosal immunity is essential for preventing the bordetella pertussis from multiplying in your lungs and your nasopharynx and for you to spread it. Here's the best part. There were two authors on that study that were from America, Dr. Catherine Edwards and Dr. Tina Tan.
Okay.
They're also, one of them, Dr. Edwards, is the author of the pertussis vaccine chapter of the medical textbooks on vaccines, Plotkin's Vaccines.
All right.
I also deposed her. And in that deposition, I showed her the study that she was an author on. That says it doesn't stop transmission. And you could see her just cringing. Like,
I saw that. It was like done remotely, right?
She
it's
can't,
just
right.
Other
She
computer.
can't
I saw
take
that
it.
interview.
She can't take it.
Yeah.
But it's her. She signed it. I said, you're an author, right? You agree with everything in here, right? You're not recanting this, right? It says it doesn't stop transmission. She's like, you got to watch it. I mean, she just like, in any event.
You can't make this stuff up.
Okay. Well, all right. So we've beaten up pertussis. But going back to your pediatric practice, right? So in your pediatric practice, we're at this point where people are going to say, but Dr. Sears, you're not seeing people with pertussis and you're not seeing people with these diseases because everybody else is vaccinated. And the response is simple.
Right.
Their personal protection. Okay. But that leaves us with MMR and varicella.
Yeah. And I am seeing pertussis, by the way. A lot of my patients are, they're coming down with it or what I at least suspect it is because I don't often test to confirm. I, just quarantine them. And so, when something does go around, in the community, regardless of vaccination status, like pertussis, my patients are going to catch that too. But, we treat them and they do fine. And I have never had a single case of serious pertussis in all my 30 years of doing this. Which I'm very happy to be able to say.
So in 30 years, let's see. So that would take us back to 1995.
Yeah. Or basically I started pediatrics in like 97, 98. So,
97, 98. Okay. And is that when you started your residency?
That was after residency.
Okay. Yeah. And you did pediatrics during your residency?
Yeah.
So when was that? When did you start your residency?
95 to 98.
Okay. Yeah. So 95, you were already seeing kids in the hospital setting at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. 95 was the first year of the chickenpox vaccine. So you for sure would have had opportunity. I mean, meaning you started out when chickenpox was endemic.
Yeah.
You were starting out before actually a whole host of the current vaccines on the schedule.
Yeah.
A lot of them came online in the 90s, late 90s. Yeah. So you would have had opportunity to actually encounter kids who would have had chickenpox and many of the things we vaccinate for.
Yeah.
In your 30 years, you've seen a lot of kids who are vaccinated with all kinds of health issues versus unvaccinated. Have you seen kids who are unvaccinated have serious complications from any of the diseases that we vaccinate for?
No. I like to actually tell patients this in the office. When they tell me they don't want to vaccinate, but they're scared to death of diseases. They hear all over the news the diseases are going to kill them, so they don't know what to do. They don't know which danger to weather, the vaccines or the diseases. And when I tell them, in my 30 years of pediatrics, I have not seen a single case of a severe infection from something you could have vaccinated against. The relief on their face is palpable, and it's wonderful to see because no one tells them that. No one tells them, and I'm very happy to be able to say that I haven't seen a single serious case. And I should define what a serious case is.
Please.
Someone who is rushed to the ER so their life can be saved, or someone who goes to the intensive care unit and needs advanced medical care to revive them and bring them back, or they're in the hospital for weeks, or they recover from the infection, but they're left with some sort of permanent disability or some health problem because of it. Nothing serious like that has ever happened. Every single thing I've seen in the office that has a vaccine that could have, been used to try to prevent it. And basically, of course, a bunch of COVID and flu and rotavirus, like everyone's going to catch all of those. A good amount of chickenpox, of course. A handful of cases of measles, another handful of mumps, some pneumonias, lots of pneumonias, a few hepatitis A's. Those are all the things I've seen. They've all been manageable. They either didn't need any treatment and they just got over it themselves, their body healed themselves, or I prescribe antibiotics, or they get better, or I have to put a few kids in the hospital for a few days for like IV antibiotics or IV hydration. But the kids are always fine. Their life was never in danger. They just needed some, semi-good medical care, and then they did fine. So that's kind of how I define. No one has ever regretted in my office their decision to not vaccinate because something then bad happened because of it. Not a single patient in all those years. So I'm super happy. I mean, I'm thrilled to be able to say that. And the more I came to realize that, 30 years ago, I thought I would be seeing all these bad infections. And as more years went by and I wasn't seeing any, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Maybe these parents that are telling me they don't want to vaccinate, maybe they're right. And so I think that's I think the crux of why more and more families now are choosing to not vaccinate, is because they are now understanding that reality. The reality is very different than the narrative that the mainstream media and medical community try to portray. And so I like to emphasize that whenever I'm having this conversation.
You got for the mainstream narrative, for the AAP view of the world, for the CDC's view of the world, you have a very dangerous life experience, don't you? I mean, you are a walking. You embody your experience. You're with 30 to 40,000 families over 30 years. Reflects what they say should have resulted in a catastrophic outcome.
Yes.
You are the thing that they say one is to fear most, which is 10, 20,000, 30, out of the 30, 40,000 families, half of them unvaccinated, zero, would you say?
Over all the years, it could be half and half. If you take the last 10, 15 years, it's
at
very
least
close
a quarter.
to zero.
How about at least a quarter? Is at least 25% of them completely unvaccinated, would you say?
That's probably half and half over all the years.
Half and half? Okay,
yeah, I'd say.
So that amounts to 15 to 20,000 families that have come through your office. And yet you should have seen what they claim is everybody's going to die scenario.
Yeah.
And they can't say, to your point, well, that's because everybody's vaccinated for pertussis. Irrelevant.
Right.
Or tetanus. Irrelevant. Or most of the other vaccine, or the other.
Yeah, but you keep wanting to get back to the vaccines where it might matter.
Well,
like measles, chickenpox. And,
I thought you answered that a bit. Meaning you've seen measles in your office. You said you've seen mumps in your office.
Yeah.
To really close the gate on that, we should get back to it. But before we go there, before we get to the MMR and chickenpox, because really that would be, pretty much it, I think, in terms of preventing transmission, in terms of what's given routinely. And that's why they focus on measles.
Right.
Measles. All right. With that said, so with your collective experience, being as objective as you can, what would you say poses more of a danger, the diseases or the vaccines for which they are that are intended to prevent those diseases that are on the childhood schedule?
Right. I would say at this point, it's my understanding that getting the vaccines presents a higher risk of a negative outcome, either an immediate bad vaccine reaction or a significant negative effect on your immune system and your health than the infections do. I think the vaccines may be riskier, probably are riskier than, did I say vaccines? Yeah, vaccines are, I think, probably riskier than the infections that they're designed to prevent. And doctors would always say, but that's because everyone vaccinates.
Right.
But we know that's not true. So that kind of, you're right, that kind of takes the main argument against what I just said is not a valid argument because vaccines don't work well enough to be keeping everyone safe.
And that's why they fall back on measles, because that vaccine can prevent transmission. So what I'm hearing you say is, on the one side, you have the vaccines. The benefit is they can prevent you from potentially getting the disease that they vaccinate for, potentially, to some degree, to some severity. On the other side, you've got three things I've heard you say. One is the risk of the vaccine itself causing immediate harm. Two is making you more susceptible to other infections. And three is chronic health issues. So you got to compare those, if you want to do apples to apples, the sum total of just the infection, preventing infection on one side to, or reducing symptoms to, all three of those things on the other. That sounds like a lot. And you've got the personal experience over 30 years to say you're safer on the unvaccinated side of that equation.
Yeah, I would say that. And I think, sadly, doctors in mainstream medicine, even if we could get them to acknowledge that, yes, vaccines could give you these three negative consequences, a bad reaction, less healthy immune system, chronic disease, they would probably say, that's worth it. That's okay. If vaccines are doing all this because at least no one's dying of these infections. I think that's what their answer would be. And I don't know that today's parents are okay with that answer. I think they would rather, once they hear how small the infection risk really is, I think they would rather take that risk than the vaccine risk over here. And I have many conversations with people. So I think there's a huge disconnect between, I think, how doctors would really look at this and how parents are looking at it today in practical terms.
Like I said, dangerous.
Yeah.
Very.
Can we delete that last part? I think I joke because this is not the first time I've been saying this. For the last 5 years. Yeah.
So have you started being public about what you just said? Because, man, I could see folks over at the medical board in California getting very worked up about what is you just reflecting. This was my clinical experience. This is what I've seen in my practice. This is based on the available information to me, the conclusion I've reached. Even though this is America, medical board, free speech. It's just speech. It's not patient care here. And I'm not, and to the extent I'm the only patient here, and I'm not complaining. I could see that would get them quite worked up and look for anything to come after you for. So, I mean, are you not as worried? Are you just, I don't know. Where are you on that?
Well, that's part of why like I said earlier, I kind of chickened out on my Instagram post where I was gonna release that whole expose on this company that gives the $2,500 per patient incentive for vaccinating. My wife and I had this conversation, and we're like, we already taken a lot of arrows. Do we want to, run back out in the field and, just put a big target on our back again? And because I feel like all it takes is for, a higher up in that medical insurance company to see my Instagram post, pick up the phone, call his buddy on the California Medical Board and say, hey, we don't like this guy.
Wait, are you trying to say that, trying to say that if you do something that could hurt their pecuniary interest, then they'll get worked up? When you say meaning when you say something about making kids healthier, that's not going to get them as worked up. I got it. All right.
Or they don't care about me. I don't know.
All right. So get it. So let me get to like the end of the whole MMR chicken book. So that's the last piece of this thing that I can't think of another open end on this, because I feel like we've addressed the selection bias, we've addressed the herd immunity argument, and I honestly can't think of anything else to address other than that, which then just on the herd immunity just leaves us with measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox. Let me ask you this. Let's assume 100%, because this is what they'll say, 100% of the kids who are unvaccinated get measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox. Okay, now factor that in. That's what they'll say. Now, Dr. Sears, how do you come out on this?
Right. It's very interesting, because the way I come out on this is, and I think you've alluded to this not just alluded, you've actually written extensively about this in your book, which I love, by the way. You guys seen his book? Vaccines, Amen.
Don't worry, they've heard about my book enough.
Can I say amen? I get an amen from the audience. Is there are benefits to catching these infections, medical benefits, health benefits to catching chickenpox and measles and mumps, and I think a little bit with rubella as well. I think all four of those infections, the medical literature has published studies showing reduced rates of certain kinds of cancers, reduce heart disease, reduce heart attacks. I think possibly reductions in certain autoimmune disorders, reduction in allergies, if you catch these infections as a child. And each disease has like a different set of long-term health benefits. And if you think of our species as just, from a natural standpoint for a minute, is maybe we are designed or, created, or maybe we evolved to where we're supposed to catch these infections, to have a better immune system, a better cardiovascular system, better health, that live a longer, healthy life. And a very tiny percentage of people who catch these infections will die from them. That's the cost. And is that a better pathway for our species? Or is getting rid of these infections maybe saving a few lives, but making all those lives less healthy? Is that a better path? And I don't know. I mean, I've chosen one path, and many families are choosing that same path. Many young parents are choosing that path of no vaccines and hopefully just a more natural, healthier body and life. And they accept the tiny, tiny little risk of infection. And many people aren't doing that because they buy into the mainstream medical model. And you ask, what happens if we go from like nobody dying of chickenpox and nobody dying of measles or mumps or rubella? What if we go to what it used to be like, where about 400 kids died of measles every year in our country, back when we had lots of measles?
Early 50s.
Yeah.
Late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, when everyone caught measles, about 400 kids died. When everyone caught chickenpox, I don't know if I'm going to get the statistic right. Could it be 50 kids died? A lot of times if they're immune compromised, like really severely, like unhealthy kids would die of chickenpox. No one died of rubella. Very few people died of mumps. But yeah, there was a cost in fatalities of these infections. And if these come back more and more, will we have some fatalities? The answer is probably yes. And I don't know what the right answer. I guess I'm kind of glad I'm not making health policy for the United States, because to transition, like say you decide, okay, we're going to let everyone catch measles, mumps, rubella. I don't think everyone will catch rubella, because I think rubella is pretty much gone by the wayside. I think it's a pretty much non-existent infection. Mumps, the vaccine doesn't really work anymore. So we have a little bit of mumps, but we don't have tons of mumps. So I don't know that mumps is going to come back. But I think measles might increase.
Yeah.
As we're going in the next 10 years, because the public just won't accept that vaccine anymore. So I think we're going to see more measles. I think we will have some children die of measles. And what's the right choice with all that? Like if the vaccine really does prevent measles transmission, and I think it does help with that, is that the right answer for everybody? But the problem is, you go on and on about measles. Like you said earlier, we need a whole measles episode, but we can never 100% get rid of measles in our society, no matter how many people vaccinate. We'll never get rid of measles. And we never have, we never will, because the vaccine doesn't work well enough and it wears off in too many people. So there will always be susceptible people to measles who will always transmit it, no matter how many people are vaccinating. And that's why I think, we certainly can't blame people who don't vaccinate because of the ongoing measles, because it's not a disease we can get rid of. I think, if say 50 kids, in a neighborhood don't vaccinate and measles goes through there, that's Can you blame them for that? I mean, it's a choice they made. And if you are vaccinating and you trust your vaccines, what do you have to worry about? And if you don't trust your vaccines, then you have no right to blame the people that didn't trust the vaccines either and didn't want to vaccinate, right? There's so many ways you can go about this, but I mean, that's kind of my take, is I think everyone in, I think, our community who's into like medical freedom and who choose not to vaccinate, a lot of them feel like the MMR vaccine is worthless and doesn't do anything and doesn't prevent transmission. And so I think when they hear people like me say, well, it kind of does often prevent transmission, I think they're a little bit taken aback by it, or they feel like I'm not saying the whole story. So I like to put out the whole story.
Uh-huh.
The vaccine has risk. It doesn't always work. It wears off. So it's not the answer to getting rid of measles, because we don't have a way to get rid of measles 100%. So we have to give everyone their medical freedom, the freedom to choose. And I think that's probably what I would opt in for, is freedom of choice. But go ahead.
No. So, but taking it from out of the realm of like society-wide public health, because public health always goes down to that least common denominator. Oh, one person's going to die of measles, and that's it. It goes straight to fear-mongering.
Yeah.
Right? Being objective about it, and your practice of 30 to 40,000 families gives an opportunity to get a real-world look into what the outcomes would be if we didn't engage in this 29 injections by first birthday, honor for first birthday schedule we're doing now, which is, even if that within that practice, if everybody got those, measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox, right, within that practice, it doesn't seem, based on the, even accepting the, based on the actual data regarding the potential harms from those infections, based on what you've said, it seems to me that you're still better off on the unvaccinated side of the equation from what you're saying.
Right, probably, but no one just opts in for those two vaccines. No one gets MMR and chickenpox only.
No, I don't mean that. Yeah. I mean, even if they don't get those, but they got those infections.
Oh, they got the infections.
Sorry, they got the infections, not the vaccines. If they got those infections, given the data regarding reductions in cardiovascular disease and in cancers, weighing and autoimmune issues, weighing those factors in, the dangers of the vaccines themselves, the modifications to the immune system that happen otherwise, as reflected by those other outcomes. I mean, cancer is your immune system not properly killing a cell that's gone awry, right? So it's reflective of something going wrong with your immune system as well, in my mind.
Yeah.
Getting the underlying infections have a benefit. You don't get the harm from the vaccine. Net, it's meaning from a society-wide perspective, there's a really good argument to make from just your experience, like that even if nobody else got the shots, that the unvaccinated would be in a far better position.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No,
that's what I mean. I'm trying to steel man your experience, even like, yeah. I'm trying to really trying to look at like all the variables in terms of what you're going to get attacked with, because you're going to get attacked for that.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you that.
Yeah. And that might be the best answer, even from a public health standpoint. If we want to truly create the healthiest children we can, who are going to grow up to be the healthiest adults they can be, that might be the right answer, is remove some of the vaccines that maybe are, creating the worst side effects and the biggest problems, or, allow people to choose to not vaccinate. And then, if all these kids catch those 4 infections and they have their lifelong immunity and better health outcomes from it, is that the best, not just the best individual health policy for them, but is that actually the best policy as a society? That might actually be true.
It might.
It might.
It's complicated.
And like I said earlier, I'm glad I'm not the one make that decision, right?
It's tough now because, I mean, I write about this in my book a bit, because, before you had measles vaccine, kids got measles at the right age.
Right. Yeah.
Right? The mothers conferred real immunity to the babies. Adults didn't get it because those who only got the measles vaccine, those women don't confer the same level of immunity to their babies. The adults, many of them remain susceptible. You're going to end up with folks, babies and adults who are going to get measles who should not get it, where it is potentially more dangerous.
Yeah.
And so if you did just eliminate the measles vaccine right now in society, you would have a one cycle. Like there would be that first round of everybody getting infected would result in a higher, which is why you actually do end up with higher issues sometimes now, precisely because the vaccine, ironically, has made those who for forever were never susceptible, potentially susceptible to the infections.
Right.
So that's tricky. It makes it tricky. Same thing with rubella is the same kind of issue.
I know. And I think I've actually made a good point in my the last chapter of my book, where my whole explanation of measles and herd immunity and what the natural infection does to our herd, and when it it makes people catch measles at the safest possible age, like childhood, and then giving the vaccine makes people susceptible to measles when they shouldn't be catching it, like you said, babies and elderly. And I make that point as a very important point. I don't think I understood that years ago. The natural design of herd immunity and how these infections are supposed to go through our population in that natural kind of way. And what we've done as a society, we've taken that away. And I think that's part of why this makes it so problematic. But I wanted to say, I wanted to touch on, it might come back to me.
Well,
we'll see if it comes back to me.
Okay, well, I'll go back to something you said earlier. Yeah. We've touched on so many topics, but you said you've now taken the path about unvaccinating, and so what I understand that to mean is that in your first editions of your book, which I read, by the way, long ago. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I remember your alternative vaccine schedule. And so when you say the alternative path, the path that you've now taken, which is with regard that, you're kind of on the no vaccines, so to speak, you mean that in some ways you have revised your vaccine book in that direction, whereas initially you did have a modified schedule. Now you have no modified schedule.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I feel like there's so many patients that came up to me, not patients, so many people that come up to me at conferences, medical conferences where a lot of families who have vaccine injured children go and attend, and they learn how to, try to help heal their family's medical problems. And so many people have come up to me and said, yeah, I got your book. I read it. It was great. I followed your vaccine schedule, your alternative vaccine schedule, and my kid was still vaccine injured. And they'll be like, I'm not blaming you. I thank you for writing it. At least we slowed everything down. God forbid what would have happened if we had followed the whole CDC schedule. Maybe my kid would have had a much more severe injury. And so I don't feel any blame for anybody who comes up and talks to me about that. And they're just kind of getting it off their heart. And but what I've come to realize is I feel like if you are genetically predisposed to vaccine injury, like there's something about your metabolism or your genes or your health that is going to make you have a really bad vaccine reaction, that could happen with an alternative vaccine schedule, with doing one vaccine at a time, trying to go really slow and careful. You could still have a really bad injury. And so for those really susceptible kids, I came to feel like, well, my alternative vaccine schedule isn't any safer because they're still getting injured. And I didn't want it down on paper anywhere anymore, I guess. I didn't want people to just blindly follow my vaccine schedule without reading the entire book, so to speak. Because I also had found out a lot of people just turn to the page my alternative vaccine schedule is on. They read it, they look at it, they're like, oh, this looks good. We'll follow that. And then they send a picture to their friend and, hey, there's this great vaccine schedule. You should follow it. Well, people, I think, who read through my whole book understand there's a lot of risk in vaccination. And I think a lot of people who read the book would tend to, choose to understand the value of raising a kid without vaccines. people who just open to one page and look at the schedule, they think I'm advising that, or I'm advocating for that. And so they would just kind of do it without getting the whole story. And I think it would still injure kids. So I wanted to take that out of the book. I didn't want to have any sort of written guidance from me in the book anymore. So I morphed that chapter where I had that schedule. I basically morphed it into a chapter where I just go on and on explaining about how to reason through all this and how to understand, number one, it's okay to raise a kid without vaccines because the disease risk is very small. Why that doesn't hurt herd immunity. Why you're not putting anyone else at risk if you don't vaccinate. And if you choose to not vaccinate, again, what my experience is in my office with such families so far. But if you do want to do some vaccines, you might want to do these 2 vaccines. And here's how you would talk to your doctor about it. You might like these 5 vaccines, and here's how you talk to your doctor about it. I gave tons of guidance, but I put the responsibility back on them and their own doctor, where they have to go and sit down with the doctor and say, I want hip vaccine and I want DTaP on my kids too, just as an example. And they work it out with their doctor. So they're getting doctor-patient guidance instead of one page in my book being their doctor.
They just tear that out and just go with that.
Yeah, and so I wanted people to have to think, if they want to vaccinate, I need them to think it through and come up with what they want to vaccinate with, not just see my little, my one pager on my book and just blindly follow that. So I feel much better about what I've written now compared to what I used to write in there. And I've also gotten a lot of flack from people who felt like there shouldn't have even ever been an alternative vaccine schedule in there for that reason, right? And so I think I got wiser about that. And
you're going to get flack from both sides. You're going to get flack from those who say you shouldn't deviate from the CDC. You should get flack from those who say no vaccines are ever safe, ever. You shouldn't have any alternative. And, but I understand you're trying to, for those who are already going to vaccine no matter what, you're saying, okay, but if you're going to do it, here's an alternative that could be safer, which is, I think, what you were trying to do is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. And it probably was safer for a lot of kids if they weren't prone to vaccine injury genetically. Anyway, yeah.
How many families have come up to you over the years and said, I followed your alternative schedule and my kid still got injured?
Boy, I would say, I don't know that I could put a number on. The number that have come up to me in conferences is probably 40 or 50.
Wow.
And so the number that have not been at a conference with me,
is greater?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's way more out there.
How do you know that? Is that like they've emailed you, contacted you other ways?
No, just, these are only people that come up to me at conferences.
Oh, I see what you mean. 40 or 50. And are these typically serious injuries from what you recall?
Yeah. Yeah.
So 40 or 50 families come up to you and said, look, we followed your alternative schedule. Our kids still got seriously injured from vaccines.
Yeah.
Typically. Is that about right? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
How many families have come up to you and said, I read your book, I got 0 vaccines, and my kid got injured from one of these diseases?
Well, none with that last part, but hundreds or maybe even thousands with the first part of what you said. We read your book, we processed all the information, we decided to do no vaccines at all, and thank you for writing it. Yeah, way more have come up to me.
Oh, meaning you have heard from those who chose to get 0 vaccines.
Yeah. Oh yeah, tons.
Hundreds, thousands?
Yeah, probably maybe at least 1,000.
At least 1,000. And they've all thanked you, but nobody's ever written to you, you SOB.
Yeah, my kid got injured by an
Nobody's written that to you.
infection.
Has anybody written to you a negative response that way?
No. Yeah, so not just in my practice, but with everyone's ability to, message me on social media, not a single one.
500,000 copies is in circulation, right?
Yeah.
Every book.
Yeah.
It's been out since 2007.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time for you to have gotten that kind of feedback, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm fortunate that I get to keep updating it too. Like my publisher has been very nice about letting me, if something new happens, a new vaccine comes out, they let me add the chapter. They let me update all the disease statistics. Like if we're having more measles, I want people to know we're having a little bit more measles. Or if we've gotten rid of something else, I like people to know that in the book. So even the data in the book are pretty up to date. Definitely not 20 years old.
Isn't it funny? You have to be thankful your publisher will let you update your own book.
I know. Well, the reason I say that is I know I have colleagues in this space who have written books who are very frustrated their publisher won't let them update it. I won't let them.
I understand.
Rewrite some of it. And
15 books in the Sears parenting library, you probably get a little more attention because collectively, I assume that's a lot of books.
Yeah.
Between the 15 books.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've written a few of those.
Yeah.
That's quite a contrast, isn't it? The, 0 versus just 40. Honestly, I thought you were going to say 4, 3, 4, 5. That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot, I think, to go up to a person and to say that. I think most people would to say, hey, in the vein that you're describing, I read your book, I followed your schedule, my kids still got injured.
Yeah.
Has anybody been very not nice about it when they've told you that?
I can see
mad
it,
at you, angry?
I can see it in some of their eyes. Yeah.
They're angry with you.
Like the words they don't use are angry because, again, they were going to vaccinate the regular way. They got my book. They decided to slow it way down and do it a lot more carefully. But they're still burdened by that decision that they made to do vaccines anyway. So I think they're wanting to share their grief with me, not in a blaming way, but just in a way to say, I'm just, I don't know, putting this out there. I don't know if I could cry on your shoulder for a minute, I just want to share this with you. And I think maybe it's partly just, I don't know if it's a little bit, takes the burden off of them a little bit, just at least to be able to talk that out a little bit.
Right.
I'd imagine. And
I would imagine too, they would have, though it would vary by the scenario, because they were going to vaccinate fully potentially, and they vaccinated on this lower schedule, you'd imagine there'd be less basis to be angry with you in those scenarios versus the folks who maybe chose to not vaccinate. And so you're probably, you would think you'd be more likely to have heard from those folks.
Yeah.
And you haven't.
No, you're totally right. Yeah.
Not only have you not heard from them, from the 500,000 folks who picked up your book, but you haven't heard from any of the 30 to 40,000 or half of those folks in your practice.
Yeah.
That's incredibly telling to me, and it's quite consistent with everything else that I've seen to date.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I can't even say probably in the thousands of where I've had patients come to my office and become patients who already have a kid who's vaccine injured and are telling me, relating to me the story. So the conversation we just had, we're just talking parents at conferences, right? But when it comes to my office, the number of vaccine injuries I've seen that have occurred elsewhere that have now come to me for help, that number's huge. It's not a small number at all. It's definitely in the thousands.
Do you find that a lot of the families will have an older kid that's vaccine injured, then they don't vaccinate the younger ones? That's
absolutely.
What I see all the time.
And that's the scenario. They're coming to me now with their younger kids because they learned what vaccines can do potentially with one of their older kids. It's heartbreaking to see and hear, and
it's amazing that they injure their kid and then become anti-science. And right, that's the way that they're framed. That's the way they're treated. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to make light of it, but it is the way they're treated. Right? They chose to get those vaccines, and then they're just called pejoratives. But that is what I see all the time too. It's the vaccinated, and so some might say, at least on that score, on the score of seeing a lot of vaccinated kids, maybe there's some selection bias there. But on the unvaccinated kids, that's tough to say there's selection bias. Yeah. I mean that is. Who's going to publish that study? Who's going to do it? You going to do it? You should put that together. I don't know. I mean,
I'm so not a researcher.
That would be such an. It would. That's the end of your license right there. That's what did it Paul Thomas in, really.
I know.
That's what did him in. You know, it's one thing for him to do it privately, like you're doing your clinic. It's another thing to publish the data and to change the science, which is peer-reviewed literature, and try to put in there, you know, in any event. Wow.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, really, I know you live it every day, but your personal experience to me is the studies are all out there for everybody to have. The data is there, but your experience is so powerful because it provides a real world example that feeds right into everything else that the data reflects.
And I love nowadays that I can no longer feel alone in this space because the number of colleagues, professionals, not just doctors, but lawyers and business people, and the number of people that now understand what I just said. And he came to that conclusion independent of me, did their own research, did all the studies. Maybe they grabbed my book, maybe they didn't. But the number of professionals and lay people and parents, especially, God love the parents, who have come to all these same conclusions it's staggering. I mean, the exponential rise in people that are now agree with us. I guess it's so nice to no longer feel alone, and then to meet these people and fight legislation with these people and fight bad bills and talk to people in the government and talk to scientists and write and collaborate and do stuff on social media and podcasts. It's awesome to not feel alone, because I would say I was alone in this or me and two other doctors did this for from like the 1995 to like 2010 or so. There's just a few of us, and then everyone just kind of came out of the woodwork. So I love that I met you a number of years ago.
That's
kind
right.
of in the legislative arena, and got to spend a few days actually with you in New York.
That's right. It's right when I was starting to actually get involved with this issue.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is like way smarter than any doctor I know. That was my first impression of you.
Oh, wow.
I think that's most people's impression of you, people that know you. The level of understanding and how you can formulate all these ideas and take all the research and put it into thoughtful arguments. I think you're one of the top people in this movement in that. And you probably heard that from other people.
You're just confused. You don't understand. I'm not an MD.
No, you're not
PhD
an MD
or an MPH. Look,
no, you're not.
Senator Blumenthal made clear that I am a knucklehead who knows nothing, and he's a senator.
Oh, yes.
So
okay. Sorry, Senator.
He knows. He knows better.
Yeah. No, but it's just fun. It's so fun to be able to become not just acquaintances, but what I consider good friends with people who are really in this movement and just not feel alone. It's just awesome. So I appreciate that you've been doing what you've been doing.
Well, I appreciate what you were doing when you were all alone. It's funny when I think about when I started doing this work about a decade ago. It seemed like there was almost nobody doing it when I was starting to do it. Oh, I can't even imagine what it was like when you started to do it. You really were like Jacob in Egypt. You were just like by yourself in the, locked up in the jail cell down there trying to interpret dreams. I don't know. It was something.
I think you meant Joseph.
Joseph.
Yeah, we'll take Jacob. We'll take Jacob for all the biblical scholars.
Appreciate that. I meant Joseph.
You get all kinds of messages on you.
You were really alone. Yeah. I mean, and look, I don't. I appreciate what you said. I mean, I don't know if my kids would agree with you that I'm that smart, but but one of the things is that I actually I say a lot that it's not hard, in my view, to be, I don't know, you call it smart, whatever, in this area, because the quote unquote experts in this arena, they're never challenged. The vaccinologists, they're never challenged. They're just showered with praise as if they are gods and save humanity. And so they're finally challenged. It doesn't take much. The data and evidence are right there. You just got to really take the time to take an opportunity to really look at it. Which is why I finally wrote a book too, as you know. But to put all of this, to put a lot of this all together in one place, and you know, and you and I were talking earlier that even for folks who've been in this a long, long, long time, if they read your book, if they read my book, they'll be surprised. They will learn things that they really did not know, even if they think they know everything already. Even if they've listened, they listen to this podcast, there's a lot to learn about it.
Yeah, like I just learned from reading the measles chapter in your book. I learned some awesome facts and data that I didn't know before.
Okay. Well,
and so I appreciate you.
There we go.
I appreciate you taking your whole unique look at all this, because I think what you've added to this argument, through ICANN and all the lawsuits and all the stuff you've written and published simply about the vaccine safety research, and then now infectious disease research and real data. I think it's been part of the change in this game.
Yeah, but
thank you.
Remember, Senator Blumenthal made clear, okay? I'm not a doctor. But I will say this, I'll give him this. He has the following point, okay? Not on a knowledge basis, but on a what does the public, who do they trust? Who do they want to hear it from basis? And the truth is that they want to hear it from a doctor. They give it more credibility and credence. I mean, I can literally hold up the same exact study as somebody with an MD and say, look, same study. I say it, the MD says it. They're like, look at that. He's just a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's just showing you the same exact thing, right? That's why, for example, I've done this in presentations. I'll show that consensus review that I talked about on pertussis vaccines not stopping transmission. I'll read the quote, does not stop transmission. And people are looking at me like, I'll read the FDA saying it. I'm like, I'll be like, I sued a company. Oh, it's like capitalism they get. Do you know what I mean? Like money, if it moved for money, then it became real. It's the weirdest thing. But I think that's in part because it's coming from me. Whereas I feel like it'd be, and if an FDA official got up and said it, they'd take it right away. Right? Same exact quote, same exact study, put it right up.
Yeah.
So I think that you add a very incredibly important voice in that you're a pediatrician, you have your 30 years of experience. And so I don't have a pediatric practice. I have a kid practice in my home. But I don't, you've got a pediatric practice. I mean, I have selection bias too in some ways, right? Where we have tens of thousands of folks who contact us for injuries on vaccines. And you know why? They're all anti-vaxxers, right? They don't vaccinate. So they contact us for their vaccine injuries because they don't vaccinate.
Right.
The reporters out there that still don't get that.
Well, yeah, I feel, honestly, I wonder if people in the media and senators and the way they challenge you and ask you questions, I wonder if they actually believe their own rhetoric, if they truly believe that, or if it's just for show to help their side of the argument.
Oh, Bob. Oh, no. Many of them really believe. No, I mean, it's like
I know the vaccinologists do, but.
No, I mean, it's like the
Wow.
You said it earlier. You don't talk to your colleagues so much, right? You don't talk because their view is everybody will die. It's like the sacrament.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
They believe that. You said it yourself earlier. They've never looked at the data. They can't tell you how many people died of measles, mumps, rubella, each one of these diseases before the year before there was a vaccine. They never looked at that. They presume collectively that's millions of deaths. They have no clue what that real number is. It is tiny, right? You've seen it. You just read that chapter, right?
Yeah.
So I think they believe it. And I believe Senator Blumenthal, I think he believes that. He believes that he is doing God's work. In many respects, that is the reason they can overlook even what you just said about your practice, right? They'll say, but everybody will die. We got to save everybody, and they'll try to point. That's why they were so excited to try to point to these two kids that they said died of measles in Texas who did not die of measles, okay? Right. They had a media frenzy over it because it feeds this narrative, this religious belief they have in these products. I think they believe it.
Yeah. No. I'm sure you're right. And so then they won't listen to anything you say or look at the data just because it doesn't fit their narrative.
They'll find what fits their narrative. Yeah. It's like what we talked about earlier with this Guardian report. So the Guardian report wants to focus now on these 3 studies that have either been apparently retracted or questioned, ignoring the hundreds of other studies, data, and trials that I cited that reflect a serious issue. Even though I specifically pointed out that these are smaller retrospective epic studies, that have obviously that have confounders. Like I even pointed that out, and it's meaning because I knew the susceptibility that those studies had, so I made a point to frame them that way. But yet this is all they want to focus on. Yeah. That's not a rational approach. That's a religious approach to vaccines. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. Yeah. But anyways, I want to finish up what I was saying, which is that I think your voice is incredibly important. I think people do want to hear it from a pediatrician. And so, I appreciate you, putting yourself out there, including because, like I said, Medical Board of California, let's go. I'm ready. They can't come after me, but they can come after you. And that's a big deal. They take away your license. You can't service the thousands and thousands of families who need you, because as you said, you're the only pediatrician in Orange County that will see these families. It's a big deal.
I know. And I feel very, very fortunate that I think my career path has led me to where I am, and I'm able to serve these families because I think any doctor who I think is worth their degree knows that you really have to learn from your patients, and you're always practicing, learning, and that's what I've done.
You mean you listened to the patients?
Listened and learned. Learned.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you want to share or talk about?
I don't know. I'd say it's kind of nice to be back on social media and getting out there more and guesting on podcasts, because I was quiet for a few years during all my medical board stuff, and the advice of my lawyer, very good lawyer, and I think he was right. I just had to kind of lay low. What was it, like the 2018 to 2021 or so, and then I decided I would get back out there and be loud again, and I'm glad I am, and so I appreciate you having me on, because I think this is something that's important for young parents to understand and know, and they are listening. The young generation, people having babies now, they are, I think, moving towards this mindset in droves, way more than I think our generation did, or my generation than your generation, because I think you're younger than me. So I think we're going to see this huge shift continue, and I think I like to call it this shift away from the CDC vaccine schedule in young families today. I think that shift is not going to reverse. I think that's going to continue, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But it's just, I don't know, I love being in this space. When you get to talk all day about something you actually enjoy talking about, it just makes it way more fun, and write about and post about on social media and create videos about, and just to do all that, and something that I think is so fascinating, I think just makes my day-to-day job and time I spend doing this very personally rewarding. When you like what you're doing versus it being like a drag or drudgery or anything like that. So,
how many years did the medical board persecute you and engage in an inquisition?
It's about an 8-year process.
8-year process. Yeah. 8-year process. Wow. And no doubt was intended to have and did have a chilling effect. But
it did temporarily, yeah.
And now you're back to being public. So And are you now like on all the social media platforms?
Yeah.
X, Instagram. Is it what is it? Dr. Bob Sears or something like that?
Yeah. Dr. Bob Sears.
Dr. Bob Sears.
Yeah, and Facebook still. And I've been told earlier today I really need to get on Substack. So you might see me on Substack.
Good. All right. Good. Well, I hope everybody should follow you.
Yeah.
And then
my website. I'm kind of old fashioned. I still have a website and. It's the same thing, Dr. Bob Sears.
Dr. Bob Sears. I would be remiss if I did not mention that I watched you have like a thing where people can sign up, and you have like a video series there, each like 6-minute videos where I loved it. I thought it was really good. Just going through like, what are the risks, and it was really good. Actually, thanks. It was really good. I don't typically get to see stuff like that from a pediatrician. So, that's really great. And the ironically, the most knowledgeable pediatricians that I know about vaccines, all of them, for the most part, don't vaccinate their patients.
Yeah. Once you know, once you learn.
That's the reality.
Yeah, I created this video series because I feel like it's a tool that my patients can actually, instead of booking a half-hour consult with me and paying, multiple hundreds of dollars for that time, just one-on-one conversation with me, they can, sign up a lot more economically and spend an hour watching me in my office, just giving a presentation about everything I know and understand about the vaccine decision. And then once a month, I get on a live Zoom call and patients will log in and ask me questions. We have just back and forth discussion once a month on Zoom, and then they email me their questions. So it's basically a way to get a vaccine consult with me instead, and not just for my patients, but anyone all over the world, of course, but in a way where I can essentially be available on that level for people in a way that a book isn't.
Yeah.
Or just like maybe just seeing a video. I kind of put everything together. Email and Zoom and FAQs and video, and it's fun. It's fun to do. So I appreciate you watching it. And
well, next thing you know, you'll be accused that you're not a lawyer.
Yes.
But
I know a good lawyer if I ever need one. So,
well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
This was great.
All right.
Keep. Don't let them have a chilling effect. Don't let them bully you around.
I will never stop doing this. This is going to be the rest of my career will be partly spent in this space. So, yeah, I can't not do it.
Well, you've got literally you've seen the living proof with your own eyes. So, I mean, it's got to be hard to do anything but at this point from your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you,
Aaron.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.